Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Red Dragon Archfiend deck profiles. I'm really excited to do this one, guys, because this actually summons one of the coolest looking dragons in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the form of Starlight Red Dragon Archfiend, which is an absolute powerhouse of a card. There's a reason that Jack Atlas used this powerhouse of a monster in the anime, because it is just an amazing monster to actually summon, and you will be summoning this card, I guarantee, just about every single turn that you play this deck. So without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out that Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards like getting your names featured in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test stands. And without further ado, guys, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Crimson Resonator. Crimson Resonator has an awesome effect for this deck and is one of the best normal summons or special summons that you're going to be able to use in this deck. That if you control no monsters, you can instantly special summon this card from your hand, and if the only other monster you control is exactly one Dark Dragon Synchro monster, you can special summon up to 2 Resonator monsters from your hand or deck, except another copy of itself. And you can only use the effect of this card once per turn. And you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except for Dark Dragon Synchro monsters the rest of the turn you activate this effect, which is totally fine because just about everything we're playing in the extra deck is a Dark Dragon Synchro monster anyways. We then play 3 copies of Red Resonator. That when this card is normal summon, you get to special summon a level 4 or lower monster from your hand, which is immediately going to get you pretty much into a level 6 synchro play, which is really helpful for the deck. And then when this card is special summoned, you can target one face-up monster on the field and gain life points equal to that monster's attack, and you can only use the effect of this card once per turn, which is a awesome effect because sometimes you'll have something like a Starlight Red Dragon Archfiend on the field when you summon this card or special summon it off an effect, and you'll gain actually 3,000 life points, which is really awesome. We then play 3 copies of Synchron Resonator. Synchron Resonator has an awesome effect as well, that if a synchro monster is on the field, you can instantly special summon this card from your hand. You can use the effect of this card once per turn, and if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target one Resonator monster in your grave except another copy of yourself and add it back to your hand, which is really good for particular plays that you're going to go into in this deck. Play the same copy of Creation Resonator. This card's very simple, that if you control a face-up level 8 or higher synchro monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is a really good effect. Play the same copy of Chain Resonator, that when this card is normal summoned while a synchro monster is on the field, you can special summon a Resonator monster from your deck except another copy of itself, which is a awesome effect for this particular card. Then we play 3 copies of Wandering King Wildwind. Wandering King Wildwind is a great card for this deck, and you really need to play 3 copies of this card, and it is a super helpful card for this particular build, that if you control a Fiend Tuner with 1500 or less attack, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you attempt this, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except synchro monsters. And then during the main phase, set the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can manage this card to add a Fiend type tuner with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand, which is any of the Resonators, which is really, really good. We then play 3 copies of Witch of the Black Forest. Witch of the Black Forest also helps the deck out a lot, that if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add one monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand, but you cannot activate cards or effects of that card's name for the rest of the turn, which is not that big of a deal because you're pretty much getting a search for the next turn. We then play 2 copies of Performage Hat Trigger. This is basically a card that's just going to give you a free special summon, that if this card is in your hand and you control 2, or you have 2 more or more monsters on the field, then you can instantly special summon this card from your hand, which is really cool. They just have to be on either player's side of the field. It doesn't matter who they belong to, but basically if there's 2 or more monsters on the field, you can instantly special summon this card. We then play the same copy of Red Familiar. Red Familiar is really helpful for this particular deck because it has the ability that you can tribute a Fiend monster and then target a Dark Dragon Synchro monster in the graveyard, special summon it in defense position, but negate its effects, and you can manage this card from the graveyard and then target one Dark Dragon Synchro monster you control, declare a level between 1 and 8, and that monster becomes the level that you chose, which sometimes comes up for this particular deck, but I just like to play this card as a 1-of because it does help sometimes, but not all of the time. We then play 2 copies of Dolgaran because you're going to be able to out your opponent's monsters extremely easily with this deck, and the Kaijus really help out in this deck too. Just being able to tribute your opponent's monsters and then go through them with a red dragon is just really, really nice. Well, I see a copy of Raiden as well, the multi-dimensional kaiju, which is also a really good card in this deck. And then 2 copies of Gamma Steel to round out the kaiju package. These are basically just here to deal with your opponent's problematic cards that you might be going up against with this particular deck. And using a kaiju package is ideal for this deck because you're usually going to get a kaiju and your opponent's going to get a kaiju. And sometimes, depending on the scenario, you might be able to use the kaiju as a synchro material. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Monster Reborn. Monster Reborn is just here to give you some extending plays in this particular deck, and it helps out a lot in this deck because sometimes you'll actually revive back a copy of Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend from the graveyard to then climb into its many forms. We then play 2 copies of Pot of Desires. The Pot of Desires are basically here to help you dig through the deck because the deck doesn't have anything in the main deck that you're really worried about if you banish a 1-of in here that you're going to be totally lost for the rest of the game, which is really cool. We play 2 copies of Resonator Command. Resonator Command is a great card, but you discard a Resonator to add a level 4 or lower Fiend type monster in your deck to your hand, which is a great card, but you're basically just searching Wild Wind and your copy of Red Familiar. So I did drop this card down to 2. It's a fantastic card, but you just really need 2 copies of it. We play 3 copies of Resonator Call. Resonator Call is a fantastic card in this deck that lets you add literally any Resonator monster that you want from your deck to your hand, which is really good. We play 3 copies of the brand new Burning Soul from King's Court. This card was released back in King's Court a little while ago, but it has the ability that if you control a level 8 or higher synchro monster, then you can add 1 card from your graveyard to your hand. Now that sounds extremely crazy. It just adds literally any card that you want. You want a Monster Reborn? Grab it. You want a Kaiju? Grab that card. You want it? That's fine. This card will grab any card that you need out of the graveyard. It is such a good and crazy card for this deck. And also, after you use this card, then you immediately add this card resolves. You have to synchro summon using monsters you control as material. And for the rest of the turn, after this card resolves, your opponent cannot target synchro monsters on the field with card effects. So it also protects your synchro monsters, which is absolutely awesome. I love this card in this deck and definitely play 3 of it. We then play 3 copies of Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. The Interrupted Kaiju Slumbers are basically here because they do destroy both players' fields, and then you get a kaiju and your opponent gets a kaiju, which helps out to go into some really awesome plays for the deck. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the single trap that we play for this deck, and that is a single copy of Red Rain. So Red Rain is a insanely good card for this deck that when it goes off, you usually instantly win the game because it has the ability that if you control a level 8 or higher synchro monster, you can banish all monsters on the field except the monster with the highest level. And also, remaining face-up monsters on the field are unaffected by other card effects except their own until the end of the turn. And if a face-up Dark Dragon Synchro monster is synchro summoned to your field while this card's in the graveyard, you can just immediately add it back to your hand. So this card is absolutely crazy. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 3 copies and no less than 3 copies of Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. So this is going to be the big boss monster of the deck. That's going to be the card that you're going to use to climb into every single one of its other forms. And this card is insane. What it does is this card's name becomes Red Dragon Archfiend while on the field or in the graveyard. And once per turn, you can destroy as many special summon effect monsters on the field as possible with attack less than or equal to this card other than this card, and then inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent for each monster destroyed, which is an awesome effect that this card can literally just board wipe the field and inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent for every single card, and then it can still attack, which is just really good. We then play 3 copies of Red Rising Dragon, which is the card that you're usually going to climb from this card into your copy of Scarlet. This card is really easy to make. You usually make it with like a red Resonator or Crimson Resonator plus any other level 4, and when this card is synchro summoned, you get to target a Resonator monster in your graveyard, special summon it back to your side of the field, but you cannot special summon monsters from the extract for the rest of the turn except synchro monsters that are Dark Dragon monsters. And then during your main phase, instead of the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target 2 level 1 Resonator monsters in your graveyard and special summon both of them back to the field. So it's really good to help you get back your monsters to climb into other forms as well. We then play 2 copies of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Abyss is really good because quick effect, you can target a face-up card your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end phase of the turn. So it can even activate mid-combo. You can just chain this card and target a face-up card and just immediately negate it. This card literally negates just about anything in the game. The only problem is it does target, but it's still a really good card. And then when this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target a tuner monster in your graveyard, special summon a defense position. You only each affect this card once per turn. We'll play the same copy of Bane. Bane is pretty good in this deck. I still only play one copy of Bane. You can bump Bane up to 2, but I still like 1 for my build because it's a really good card, but you don't always summon it. Usually I just go into Scarlight and then into the other forms that we have in the extra deck as well. I kind of wanted to have a bunch of different ones in the deck, so I just played 1. But what this card does is you can tribute a monster and then target 1 Red Dragon Archfiend in your graveyard and special summon it back to your side of the field. And then when this card inflicts damage to your opponent, you can special summon 2 tuner monsters with the same level, 1 from your deck and 1 from your graveyard in defense position, and you can only select this card once per turn. It's a really good card to help you step into your copy of Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity. We then play a single copy of Tyrant Red Dragon Archfiend. This card is really, really good. It takes 2 tuners to step into this card, and it has the ability they must be synchro summoned and cannot be special by other ways. You only use following effects of this card once per turn. During your main phase, you can destroy all other cards on the field, and for the rest of the turn, other monsters you control cannot attack. And then during either player's battle phase, when a spell trap effect is activated, you negate the activation if you destroy that card. And if you do that, this card also gains 500 attack, going to a 4,000 beat stick, which is just really, really good. We then play a single copy of King Calamity. King Calamity is a really good boss monster. I really like its effects, that it has a bunch of effects that when this card is synchro summoned, you can activate the effect. For the rest of the turn, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects, and also your opponent cannot activate, or your opponent's cards cannot activate their effects either. And then your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this card's effect activation. And if this card destroys a monster of a battle, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. And if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, either by battle or by card effect, you can target a level 8 or lower dragon dark synchro in your graveyard and special summon it. So basically you're going to immediately get your Scarlight right back. We then played the big boss monster that you're always going to be summoning in the deck, which is a single copy of Red Supernova. Supernova is literally ridiculous and is the craziest boss monster, like one of the craziest boss monsters in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And what it basically does is it must be synchro summoned and gains 500 attack for each tuner monster in the graveyard. And it cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects either, and once per turn when your opponent's monster effect is activated, or when an opponent's monster declares an attack, quick effect, you can activate this effect to banish this card and also banish all the cards your opponent controls. Just literally everything is gone, which is really insane. And then once per turn during the next end phase after this card was banished, by its own effect, you just special summon this card back to your side of the field, but none of the cards come back. It's a 4,000 beat stick, takes 3 tuners to summon it and 1 dragon synchro. So usually you're going to use a Scarlight plus a couple of the Resonator monsters to summon this card. So for the other cards, we're playing a single copy of Chaos Ruler because it helps you send cards from deck to graveyard to be able to go into some really good plays and get your copies of your Burning Souls live, which is super helpful. 1 copy of Void Ogre because it negates spells and traps if you don't have anything in your hand, and a single copy of Beals just in case you need a monster to protect you, because this card is going to be the big defensive card because it can't be destroyed by battle or by card effects. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It is an absolutely crazy fun dragon deck to be able to play that just summons pretty much just synchro monsters. I absolutely love this deck, and it is one of my favorite decks of all time to actually play, and it's a deck I've been playing ever since they gave it. I even played this deck before they gave it the support back in Eternity Code. So this deck is just really fun. Like, it's a really fun deck to play around with, and it summons one of the coolest dragon synchros in the entire game. And you can even throw in Beals and stuff like that that are really awesome dark dragons in their own right. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below. We'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.